Hey listeners, I'm your host, Juan Collado Díaz, and this is Político. Hi listeners, Juan Collado Díaz here, and today I have with me an amazing individual, and that is John Paul Moran. He is the creator of the Opportunity Score and Go USA, and his goal is to just educate people like you about what politicians are good or bad, depending on your views and not a party. We are tired of the two political party system, and it's time to develop a non-partisan system that helps people like you and I. So John Paul decided to do that, and he put it to work with an algorithm that tells people based on economic, school, and many other kinds of ideas that we, the American people, seek every day to know and find more about. So without further ado, John, do you mind telling me a little bit about you, the work that you have done, and what got you to create this amazing database? But on top of that, can you tell me a little bit about your time running for public office, and also how do you got here where you are today?
Okay, so great. Well, thank you for having me on, Juan. And my name is John Paul Moran. I have a kind of a unique background. I was an MIT scientist. I built a space telescope. I designed the optics for a major space-based telescope out of college. And then I started marketing companies, printing companies, a surfing brand in California. I've done a lot of different entrepreneurial projects in my life. And then I said, I started getting more interested in politics because I said, I saw the way the country was trending in 2015 before Trump was elected the first time. And I thought it was kind of a train wreck. And I said, these people are running our country are not like business people. They don't seem to be making much sense or doing what the people want. And so I from there, I wrote a book, and then I decided to run for Congress in 2020 as a Republican in the bluest state in the country. And if your listeners don't know who that is, which state that is, it's Massachusetts, as blue gets. Because I figured, we have to stand up and fight for what we believe in. So I ran for Congress, and that's when I realized that there's something really, really wrong with our political system in America, because people are not voting for people that support their interests. It's like going to buy a car, but buying the opposite car of what you're looking for when you go onto the lot. People are very good when it comes to buying products. They have, Yelp ratings for restaurants. They have Rotten Tomatoes for movies. They have Carfax for cars. But yet there's no good standard to say, who should I vote for? Because who's going to lines up with me on the issues? So I said, I thought about it, and I got together with a number of people, including two other MITers, and said, let's put our brainpower together and think, what can we do to create something that would be a universal, nonpartisan rating system that just holds these people to account for what they're supposed to be doing, which is serving the people they swear to serve, and including defending the Constitution they swear on. That's it. That's how we measure. That's how we decided to measure politicians. So we created the Opportunity Score at Grant Opportunity USA, which is the nonprofit that runs it. Is Go USA in short. We branded it the Opportunity Score, and then the brand name is OpScore. So that's how it got started. Really out of frustration, because I spent a year and a half of my life preparing for funding, running for Congress, and then losing. And losing is understandable, and running as a Republican in a blue state. But it doesn't make sense when I talk to people that I met throughout the campaign trail, which were thousands of people in 2020 in the middle of COVID, while my challenger, or the incumbent Democrat Seth Moulton, was hiding, not doing anything, not talking to any voters. And everybody I talked to, I counted about 85% supported me on the issues. So how do you lose a race when 85% of people you sample, thousands of people, say they support you? That's what I said. There's something wrong with this picture, and we have to fix it. That's why we created the OpScore. Absolutely.
That sounds great. It's a very unique story, because I will say I don't see many people who are, in the conservative side running in a very blue, like Massachusetts, a super blue state. So it's rare when you see something like that. So I wanted to ask you now, with that, you mentioned your background in Congress. Do you think you were, in a way, I guess, like it was taken away because the incumbent was already a Democrat, a blue state, and there was, misinformation, disinformation probably spread about this individual being elected? Because he's elected, he probably decided to stay. Do you think there was a lot had to do with that, with people not understanding like the issues and knowing and just electing the person because they're there?
Yeah, so that's the frustration, is that in the modern world, I get it. 20, 30 years ago, people would say, Pepsi, Coke, or whatever. They were aligned. They were aligned to brands, and that happened. It still happens. People do get aligned with brands, but today people are not. They're much more savvy. They'll do their research because of the internet. They can do their research. They can figure out which cars and which movies and which bicycles and which products work better and have better ratings. And people trust. I'm an advertising guy too, and people trust their peers 10 to 20 times more than they trust advertising, which means that's the reason why they trust those Yelp ratings, those Rotten Tomatoes ratings, and those popular scores, because they trust their peers much more than they trust somebody trying to sell them something, right? So a politician is just trying to sell you. And what's happened is issue after issue, I look at like the economy. The average person is much more for free markets than socialism. They're much more for American jobs. They're much more for example, school choice. 85% of people want school choice, yet one side, the left, the Democrats, are against school choice because they're more or less in line with the teachers' unions. Whereas the right wants school choice. And yet it's 85%, but yet in a blue state, you don't get elected. And the same thing when you look at police protection. The Democrats and the left, Seth Moulton wanted to burn down Boston, saying he's going to march for freedom as they're burning and attacking and ransacking Boston with Black Lives Matter back in 2021 or 2020, I guess at the time. And yet, the majority of people in Massachusetts, even in the blue state, they support the police. So one issue after another, there's a lot more support for the common sense, what I call the common sense side, which is more or less today is really, really reflects American first values. So that being said, people are just knee-jerk reaction. I'm always voting Democrat. I will always vote Democrat. And there's Republicans will do the same thing. And my attitude is don't just vote Republican or Democrat just because of party. Look at the issues and line up with who you line up with on the issues. And then it makes sense. But it makes no sense just to vote against yourself because you've always voted that way or because of one single issue or two single issues, abortion or something, you vote 100% for this candidate. Yet there's 30 other issues that you care about, but you're just not thinking about. So added together, that's what the ops score does. It makes it easy for voters to have a whole picture of this candidate and not just vote on party lines or single issues or what you're told to vote for because your union or your friends or whoever else tells you to vote that way.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned the marketing and brand. I'm also a branding and marketing person, actually. I have a business in marketing and I do branding and all that stuff here in Ohio. And that comes a lot, as you said, people have put this label to where now it's either left or right. You cannot be anything else, pretty much. And we have lost that independence of people, being outside of a party and voting for issues. And that has created a bunch of robots. They're just coded now to either be just left or right, but not think about the issues. And that's what creates like the very blue states or very red states. And then you have the swing states who are still somewhat, you can say that they are, in a way, they still have their brains, there to an extent, and they're still voting based on issues and less on, I'm just Brendan, and this, I have the stamp and now I have to go for it. I have a friend who's very Democrat, super blue, and she has pretty much everybody who says if they're voting differently, she will scream at them, go after them. I think I voted my entire life. I voted third party. I have never voted left or right because I don't feel like I align with either or. And I've been yelled at like plenty of times by her for not voting Democrat. So I know how that stamp, having that stamp it's such a thing, then they have to just follow, which it's horrible. And, with that, I'm going to ask you, the next question that I have for you. When you started Go USA, what was the like purpose behind it? Because I know you said like it's not red or blue. In the slogan, it's not red or blue. It's them versus you, which I love. So, what inspired you, to create something like this?
Well, I can say one thing. Yeah, one of our things is not left or right or red versus blue. It's them versus you. And just to kind of tack on to that is my belief is that the majority of people, and a lot of people go into Congress and to positions of power in government with some altruistic ideals in the beginning, but ultimately it becomes about power and control. And the people that want power and control, and it's a lot of maneuvering to get people to vote for you because they want that power and control. We want to put an end to that because there are servants. These people serve us. They're not our masters. And particularly in the left, the belief is that they're our masters, and they're not our masters. We're free men and women. And I also blame Thomas Jefferson because he's my sixth generation great uncle. And we're very proud of it in the historical lineage in the family. through my mother's side. And there's one thing Thomas Jefferson said. He's definitely hated tyranny, and this is really also a fight against tyranny. So that being said, I actually started Go USA with some people before I ran for Congress, as early as 2018. But then it was more of a think tank. We had these principles of opportunity, 5 points of opportunity, which builds out our rating system is based on these 5 points of opportunity we call out, which are personal at the top of the star, which is personal opportunities, more or less it's constitutional liberties and freedoms. That's what we measure at the top of the star. And as you go around the 5-point star, which of course very American 5-point star is economic opportunity, social opportunity, educational opportunity, and then national opportunity. And that would be everything that doesn't fit into one of those buckets. So basically national level elections and environment and military and police. So that's how we built it out. And we decided, I had some great friends I worked with to start that in 2018. And then I ran for Congress. And then after I ran for Congress, literally the day after the election, I said, we have to build this rating system I've been dreaming about for a couple of years. And we started right off the bat in January 2021. We were out full force developing this rating system to have a better measuring stick for people to vote. Because we figured if everybody had that tool, America would be a very different place.
Oh, absolutely. And as you said earlier, there's a lot of different tools you have Yelp, you have Google ratings, you have all these other rating systems, but you don't have one for the people you're electing. I can literally go right now and rate my professor online for college, but I cannot go and rate my local politician. But now I see, you have the opportunity score, which creates that opportunity for many people to rate how they feel about this individual. And, with that, let me ask you, can you explain the opportunity score for me first? How does that work, and what came together in your brains? How do you put the technology together? How do you create a strategic plan behind it to make it work for people out here?
Okay, so these are all great points. And I'll say that, first of all, right now, the public doesn't actually participate in the creation of the ratings currently, but that as we have a new system that we're developing that will incorporate more interactivity. What we do is we look at well, first of all, we have a group of people that were the brain power. I spearheaded it, but I've got I have a whole team of people that were involved as volunteers to create the planning for this, as well as Jonathan Lenoz, who's our tech guy, MIT tech guy that built the technology around it, and then Jason Begor, who also joined the tech team, the development of the technology. And the big picture is we said, okay, let's step back from this. Let's look at the top 25 issues people care about across our 5 points of opportunity. And what are the top issues? So this is not really debatable. We know that our top 25 issues are things like school choice, are things like the environment, and are things like election integrity and police and gay rights, right? All these things these are all top issues people care about. So we looked at this healthcare, other one, of course. And then we said, okay, how can we create a rating system that would make sense that wouldn't be left or right? Now, there are rating systems. There's people that rate politicians, CPAC, Conservative Political Action Committee. They have a rating system where they rate people on how conservative they are. There's progressive sites that rate somebody how progressive they are. There's pro-abortion and anti-abortion sites that rate people on that. There's the NRA. Okay, there's a lot of individual ratings, but generally speaking, they're very ideological. So if you're in the middle or on the left, are you ever going to look at a CPAC rating? You're never going to look at a CPAC rating. If you're on the right, are you ever going to look at a progressive rating? So those ratings have their benefits almost to internal audiences within the party, but they're not very useful for an average person that just wants to trust. Just give me the facts, Jack. Where does this person stand on the issues? Drop the crap, right? Where they stand. So we said, okay, what is the job of a politician? They swear on the Constitution. So wouldn't you say that makes sense that they have to follow what they swear on? I mean, that's the if you're Catholic, you follow the Bible, right? You follow Jesus. That's what you do. You don't go against it, right? And the same if you're American politician, you should damn well follow the Constitution. They all say they do. So that's one measure that we look at as the first measure to make sure that it falls constitutionally. As long as it's constitutional, and only some issues are constitutional, okay? Many of them are not. Then we say, okay, as long as it's constitutional, that's the guardrails, then what is the will of the people? That's their job. If you have a constituency that wants lower taxes, that wants school choice, that doesn't want biological men in girls' sports, that wants maybe I'll say on the other side, that wants healthcare for all, right? 80% of people want the ability to have either health private or government if you can't afford your private healthcare. That's an example that where sometimes the Democrats win. So it's not all one-sided. But you look at where do people stand, then that's what we say is pro-opportunity or anti-opportunity. We use the opportunity scale because we want more opportunity for Americans, which we believe is found with when the government does what the people want and follows its own law, the Constitution. That can't be called, do you think that could be called partisan? People will say it sounds right-wing. I don't see how that's right-wing. I think that's American wing.
It's definitely nonpartisan. When you look at what the people want, it's definitely nonpartisan because you're asking the people. You're not asking,
that's right.
You're not going out there and just asking a specific group of people. You're asking the people.
All people.
And, we look at it and even the Constitution starts with we the people, and the Constitution was a nonpartisan document. So it's always, when you say people, you're asking a large group of people that may or may not be affiliated with a party. They may not feel associated. And, for what I looked, I've seen, and I've read on the site, I can get to see more of now I can understand more of the scores and how it works by looking at it. And also I'm looking and you have, for example, if you go under personal opportunity, you have the details and the drop down on how this came to be what it is. And I like that. I like that you can actually, you're not only giving a score to the person, you're giving a score and you're explaining why they got that score.
That's right. So every issue we look at the topic and we assign a score. Now it's very important for the listeners to know if we assign something an anti-opportunity score, they lose a point. So if they're with the people or the Constitution, they win the point. If they're against them, they lose a point. If it's in the middle or mixed or indeterminable, they get a 0 right in the middle. That's how every score is done. It goes from -5 to +5. The best score you can get is a 5. No one's ever gotten that. The worst score you could ever get is -5. No one's ever gotten that. So just to give you kind of a boundaries of how the score works. And if for every issue, if we say, for example, where do you stand on constitutional gun control? So, one of the questions is, I support the Second Amendment. The second question on gun rights is, I support common sense constitutional gun laws. And you won't find a lot of Republicans saying that they support that, but this we say constitutional because everything's got to be constitutional. So we do that, and then we say, okay, where do they stand? Then we show the evidence of, okay, the majority of people, we have ratings in research through Pew Research and other trusted in Gallup and other nationally recognized. Generally speaking, these are middle of the road, nonpartisan survey and polling companies that show statistically where people stand on these issues. And it shows that most people want common sense gun. They don't want crazy people. They want violent criminals with guns. They want background checks. They don't want people going to gun shows and buying without background checks. These are things so that's how we rate. And then we give the proof. So when you go to, for example, you go to, for voter ID, 80 to 90% of Americans across survey after survey want voter ID. That's where the Rotten Tomatoes flavor is. And we don't have actual people going in right now and voting themselves, but we look at the reputable polling companies for that data, if that makes sense. So that's where we say, okay, someone's for it, they get the point. If they're against it, they lose the point. But as the voter, you can take the test yourself and match up like a dating game where you say, this is me and this is my politician. Now, if I'm kind of on the far left and I'm getting a negative score, you can own that. You can be proud of that. I'm a -3. I'm anti-opportunity, which means I am against the will of the majority of the people on these issues, and I'm proud of it. You can do that. You're an American. You can say, I want the laundry list of far left ideals, and you can own that, and you can use it. And our research actually showed that just as many Democrats got negative scores actually said they would use the op score as Republicans. If you can believe it, we have data showing that. So people that even got negative scores said, you know what, this is a useful tool for me. And even though I get a so-called negative score, that's fine. If I'm a -3, I want to vote for -3s. So it's interesting. That's how we make it. We don't say you're not pushed to vote for one side or the other. You're pushed to vote for yourself.
Oh, no, absolutely. I remember when I was in high school, we had this online test. I think it was called I Side With, and you would look and it would ask you different issues and you would have voted. And it seems kind of like close to that, but instead it shows you the candidates that are on your line, which I like. Back when I was in high school, it only showed you you're either a Democrat or a Republican. It didn't tell you anything else. It just tells you you're affiliated with this party. I was like, but I don't like either or. So I was very curious throughout it. And so I'm looking over here. I'm looking at Grand Opportunity USA, and I see one thing that I see is take the opportunity score challenge, and I see the badge, and I love it because I'm a huge Pepsi guy. I love the company, their marketing and stuff, and I just recently released the Pepsi challenge once again. They just did that, and I see that it looks like the button, just like that one, and I love that. So, what is the do you mind explaining this one more in depth? The opportunity score challenge. What are some of the questions that are in that challenge for people?
Oh, great score. I'm glad we're getting to this great topic here. So that was our big new thing for 2024 was the op score challenge. And you can see we actually, in marketing, sometimes you try to draft off, try to get people the flavor of what you're trying to do. So we have a similar look, actually. We have a similar look to the Pepsi challenge, which is that yellow button with the red lettering. Because in a way, it's kind of similar. Is that I thought, the kind of light went off my head. As I mentioned, I've had a marketing agency for years, and I know one of the top, sometimes considered the number one example, most successful campaign in history was the Pepsi Challenge. Started in 1975, I think. So it's going on for almost 50 years, and they've converted millions of people to switch how they drink cola because they did the side by side, and they said you're the consumer, you decide. And we're like, well, you're the voter, you decide. People are often thinking they like one and they like the other, and they don't know until they do the blind test. So that's the idea behind this. So what we do is there's 25 topics. It's actually 36 questions. So it takes about 8 or 10 minutes to take, which is just a long commercial break, by the way, or two. All right. And you take the question, and it makes you think. For every question we ask, we're very specific about the questions we ask to try to get you to think as the voter and not think red or blue, think of you. Where do you stand? What do you want? We ask people to just answer honestly. And then at the end, they get a score, -5 to +5, pro-opportunity, anti-opportunity. It's like a credit rating. You have a positive score on the top, say very strong pro-opportunity. That would be like green in a credit rating, right? In the middle would be orange, and that's sort of the danger zone. And that's called moderate opportunity or poor opportunity. And then you get to the anti-opportunity, which is red, which means you're kind of standing with people, you're standing against the voters and the Constitution. So that's how it works. Now you get your score, supposing you get your score and you get let's call a number, let's say you get a 3. You get a 3. That would be called a moderate opportunity score. And then what you presented with by putting your zip code in, and sometimes a couple other qualifiers, because we found out some zip codes have more than have 2 reps to pick from. So sometimes they don't go across zip code lines. We found out in Congress they don't go by zip codes. So there's sometimes a bit more. You have to put your street address sometimes in to find the right candidates for.
Yes, when I put as we were speaking at the beginning, I was actually working that's why you see me looking away every now and then. I was actually doing it. And at the beginning it asked me but it showed me my congressional district, and then it showed my border congressional district. That are both I border 2 congressional districts. So I was able to have the knowledge of which one is mine. So I was able to find it and look and finish it. I got a 3.20. So
okay,
I'm there.
Well, I'm saying congratulations, because any score you get, I would say congratulations, honestly, because it's your score, you own it, right? But one thing I'll say is unlike some of the I side with, for example, we combine it all together. It's like a GPA in college. We give you a science score, and we do have a bias. We have a bias for America. We have a bias for Thomas Jefferson. We are Thomas Jefferson in the sense that we have a bias for, the Constitution, will of the people. That's the bias. So there is a little bias. I think it's a very pro-American opportunity bias. But the point is, you get your score. Now you're presented with the people. Now this is still built for 2024. We haven't updated it because 2026 is not here yet. We don't have the challenging candidates. The OPCO challenge is really not meant to be used year round as much as it's meant to be used during election cycles, because this gives you the candidate, the incumbent versus the candidate. The candidate versus the candidate, the new candidate versus the sitting incumbent, and gives you scores for both, for your senator and your representative and your president, which only happens every 4 years, not every 2 years, but every 2 years you have the Senate and the House up for election. So you're given the choice, and now you're given the numbers blind. First, it just says that this is the score, this is your score. Now you see the scores of the 2 competing senators and the 2 competing House, people running for the House. Then you're asked to pick. Now, usually what you do is we kind of give you the indication based on color the color matches yours more, or the number. We make it two ways. We have the color match closer to your color, and the number, so you can say which is closest to you to match, either the color or the number. And you usually, most voters will then, common sense, you're going to pick the one that's closest to you, right? Just like if you're on a dating app, if you have the same interest, you're going to pick the person that's closest to you, right?
Absolutely. So
that's how
you were mentioning a little bit of that, and you got me to one question that I had is how has the opportunity score benefit past elections? Let's go like the last presidential election, 2024. How has the opportunity score and Go USA benefit those elections, or have supported and helped people even like going out and vote?
Okay, so this is the big thing. So great question. That's sort of the question of the day from what happened. What's the impact of the op score? We've talked to thousands of people. We've reached millions of people with our ads, our social media posts, and specifically almost 800,000 specific voters in swing states and swing races that we targeted. We targeted 40 of the closest races in the country, including the White House, this past election, to help voters have a better tool to be able to pick who they want to vote for. When we did that, when we produced that, and we saw the data on it, we found data that matched virtually exactly to a poll we did in Wisconsin. Excuse me, poll we produced in Wisconsin in last March of 24. We polled thousands of people. We got 525 completions, which was a statistically significant number to do the analysis of how many people line up with what and how do they pick. What we found was startling. What we found was that virtually 100% of Republicans stayed and picked Republicans when they took the test. 83% of independents. Now this is reaching our ads, and our OpScore challenge reached 790,000 people in these critical swing states. 83% of independents actually chose what we say American First Republicans, but generally it's Republicans in general on the quiz when they took it, when they lined up. And interestingly, over 50%, about 60% of Democrats lined up and picked Republicans in this test, which means that the country is very united. When we did our Wisconsin poll, we found numbers that were startling, that 13% of the public on the issues, and we have the proof to show it. We can open the books anytime. Only 13% of the people that took that test that we went through lined up with congressional Democrats. 67% lined up with congressional Republicans. And when we split the difference based upon a 5-to-1 ratio, it came out 85-15. And that's interestingly exactly the number we got from the op score when we pushed it out to 790,000 voters versus the 500 we sampled in Wisconsin. That being said, it shows that on the issues, if we look at one issue after the other, we look at, for example, opposing, the concern about waste. Interesting, this is like a Doge thing. The waste and corruption in government, that had Republicans and Democrats, about 80% plus, were very concerned about that. On school choice, it was, again, the numbers line up with Pew Research, so 85% on voter ID, again, same number. So our numbers jive with national polls. It jives with our test in Wisconsin, and it shows that actually over 80% of Americans are actually American first, and they just don't know it. Now, I'm not pushing republicanism. I'm not trying to be partisan, but today, right here and right now, that's what the data speaks, is that there's many more people that believe in what we call common sense. 79% of people, poll after poll, right now you see in the news, that don't want men and women in women's sports, especially in the high school level. They don't want that. They don't believe it's right, and that's what our data shows something similar. So we're a very united country, and there's extreme fringes that are fighting the battle for control, but the left has gone so far left that they have no support from the public on the issues, virtually none. That's what's happening in America today.
That makes a lot of sense.
It wasn't like that 2 decades ago.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense compared to what we have seen in the past, like elections, where people, and people have chosen to vote otherwise, because even we saw the Democrats literally put themselves in the position of sadly not getting elected, or happily not getting elected, however you see it or however people see it, but they took that opportunity away from themselves, which it's kind of like, okay, you're the Titanic, but you're also the iceberg. You're pretty much creating your own problem instead of saving your butts. And we saw that with the party. I have a good friend that always says they preach to their choir. instead of preaching to the actual to bring new people, they preached to the choir, to the people that they already had, and the people that they had was way less, and they understood that, and then they just went with it because they know that they didn't have a chance in this past election.
Well, when you look at Trump, but when you look at the landslide election for Trump, people are very angry about it. People may not love Trump's personality. A lot of people don't. But actually, my attitude is, think about it. If you're hiring, this is basically the resume. The app score is the resume. Are you going to be sitting next to that person in your office dealing with them every day? You're really not going to be doing that. So I understand why personality is important, and it is. But people put so much stake in I like this personality or don't. You know what? If you have a CEO of your company and that person's kind of a jerk, but they're fighting and you have a great job and you have job security because your company kicks ass, you're probably all right with that CEO. It's like it takes away the personality part of it and says, look at what's their job. And I also believe that the left got very ideological, and we rated people in the past. John F. Kennedy got a 4 or a 4.2, about the same score as Ronald Reagan, and he was a Democrat. And we look at Democrats, if we looked at Bill Clinton, and he didn't do too bad. So actually, over the past 20 years, the Democrats went very, very far left. And I think they believe that with their control of the media and the educational system and the Hollywood and all of this, all this kind of control that they've enjoyed for the past 20 years, that they could keep getting elected. But they forget about something called the issues. And that's the only thing people should be voting on, is the damn issues, and not whether someone browbeats somebody calling them a Nazi all day long, or the right could flip over in 10 years and turn just as bad, maybe. That's why our scoring system will hold anybody to account. So if in the future it could be that the Republican Party goes off the rails, well, this will keep everybody centered. If you do what the people want and what the Constitution says, we'll have no problem in America.
Oh, absolutely. And I was looking at this, and I was actually very interesting when I was looking at, I saw John F. Kennedy, and I was like, whoa, that is incredible. Then you guys took the time to go back and actually look at people like Kennedy, or you guys look at Clinton. Guys look at Reagan, and those to me are like, wow. They took their time to do the work and put on and I mean, like, even looking at as you said, like Bill Clinton, he got a 1 score, but I mean that in itself share a lot about how it looks like, because you can see like almost very pro on education. Moderate pro-opportunity. You see moderate pro-opportunity on social opportunity. You see on economic, his weak opportunity, but it's still like on the bluer side, and instead of the red, on the anti, so it's more on the pro. And that is visible of the non-partisan of the work in here. It's very visible through what we're seeing in here. So that's very enjoyable to see, and then to also see that we're looking at past individuals and see their work and compare it to the current ones, and we can see how the gears have shifted between parties and stuff, and that is incredible, because we take a look at the past and then we take a look at the future, and we don't know what's going to happen. And then with that, I'm going to ask you I have an in-closing question for you, and it is, what are your plans for the future for Go USA and the opportunity score in American politics and beyond?
Well, great that you asked that question, because we have a lot in the future. Right now, we're working on a next generation version of this. Right now, there's not a lot of reason for people to keep coming back and looking at the same scores we did, because we do the scores. It takes thousands of hours for tons of volunteers to rate 535 members of Congress, for example, and all their challengers. That's over 1,000 people plus the presidency, right? So there's a lot of work there. Plus, we have state level people say, can you do our state level people? Well, you imagine that's going to be tens of thousands of people, if not 100,000, if you look at everybody running in the country. So we're working on a system that's going to not totally replace, but 90% replace the ratings person. We're using AI, because a lot of the work we're doing is mechanical. We say, here's the rules, and then who supports gun rights and who doesn't, who supports abortion and who doesn't, right? So that can be done automatically. That's kind of a very good use of AI. So we're working on that now. That'll be rolling out in the coming months. And then that will be a living score. So almost like a credit rating, like your score can go up and down by the day. Imagine as these politicians have a spotlight and a spotlight on them 24/7, 365 days a year. If they step out of line, if they commit fraud, or they vote on something, or they say something, we want that to be exposed in their score on a regular basis. We think that will change a lot, because then people will have a reason to go back to the score regularly. So that's the one big change we're going to be doing, and it'll be all open. So it's not going to be anything nobody's pulling any strings. Here's the issue. Here's where they stand. Here's the proof, with eyes across all of the entire internet. We think that's going to make it more powerful and make it be more creditworthy for voters to say, I can trust this. They're just using AI to say, where does this person stand, and here's the proof. So we're going to be doing that, and we're also looking to get to produce a tour called we're going to call it the GOAT Tour, the Grand Opportunity American Tour, otherwise GOAT, because the greatest of all time, right? Like sports. And we want to reach voters, and especially independent voters and those disaffected Democrats that say, wait, I was a Democrat in the 90s, or even 10 years ago or 15 years ago, or maybe I'm a John F. Kennedy Democrat, and I'm like, I like this, with the things Trump is saying. Vice versa, you might be someone that always thought they were on the right, but then says, you know what, I kind of am for men and women's sports. Right? I kind of am for some of these progressive principles. We don't care. Just stand for yourself. So we're going to be looking to get the word out on the op score, because we think the country needs it. We need a nonpartisan, common sense, where do they stand on the issue? And yes, you can use it if on your left, and if you're on the left, just like you can use it if you're on the right. So, and forget which party you're at. Be independent minded when you take it. And the last thing I'll say is we patent this worldwide, in the U.S. and worldwide, because we have countries. We're friends with people and freedom fighters in other countries that say, can you make this happen in our country? Well, that's going to take some time and investment, but we think that we could use the same system, a modified system, in every country, because everybody in every country, in Europe, in Asia, anywhere in the world, in Africa, South America, the will of the people should be observed. They should follow the will of the people within the boundaries of human rights, which would be that the idea is just like we have the Constitution. So we're working on that in the future to say, we make it successful here. The world would really be better off if the common sense person was in charge, and not these ideological people that want to control us or take our money. We don't need that anymore. We need the opposite. We need Thomas Jefferson minded, freedom minded, will of the people type of people in America and around the world. So that's what we hope that we can do.
Absolutely, and I love that. And for those at home that want to actually look at the opportunity score, you can find it at www.oppscore.org, and it will also be linked in the show notes and blog posts of this episode. www.politicopod.com. And for those also wondering, because I'm wondering this right now, do you ever took the Pepsi challenge?
I took the Pepsi challenge. Yes, I did take the Pepsi challenge.
What was your results?
I liked Coke better.
Well, there you go. Even though I'm a Pepsi guy, I can agree. Sometimes I like cherry Coke better than cherry Pepsi. So that gives them some credit.
I actually don't drink it much. I kind of have a joke, being that I'm about 3/4 Irish. The part of me that's not related to Jefferson, he's English, right? But I generally don't drink Coke unless there's rum in it, to be honest.
Well, there you go. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm hoping to see a lot of this amazing work keep growing, and I'm very excited to see what's happening in the future with the opportunity score. Yes,
thank you. And we ask everybody, it doesn't make any difference what side you're on. This is nonpartisan. Take the score, line up, and see where you stand, and you'll be surprised. And it could work either way. But I'll say right now, the far left, it really doesn't have much support populist wise. And if they want to get back in the game, the Democrats, they ought to start listening to the voters more. That's what I would say. Not that I want to help either side, but that's where it is. And if the Republicans want to stay in power, then they should keep listening to the will of the people. But again, don't worry about party. Think about yourself, vote for yourself, and forget about party labels. It doesn't make a difference. Just vote for yourself, and the world would be much better off if everybody took the OpScore challenge. So,
absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Juan.
Thank you so much for listening. If you are interested to learn more about this episode, on the show notes, visit www.politicopod.com. If you're listening from Spotify, make sure to give us a follow to stay up to date with all new releases. And if you're listening from our podcast, give us a 5-star review so we can get to the top. This and all other episodes of Político with Juan Collado Díaz are part of the Inquisitor Media Originals.